So we'll start by setting our motivation. So as we do, we generate the minds of faith or confidence and refuge and bodhicitta. So the mind of refuge is a natural extension of the mind of confidence, the mind of faith, a mind that understands the transformative and reliable power of the Buddhist teachings. It recognizes that there are valid reasons for having confidence in the long history of practitioners putting the Buddha's teachings into practice and achieving the results of Buddhahood. That we can take confidence, can have faith in that 2,600-year history. There's logic and reason at the base of that confidence. And as such, the Buddha and his teachings and the community of practitioners who deeply understand his teachings serve as also valid sources of protection. And that the reason to engage in the Buddhist path, whether it's the small scope or the middle scope or the great scope, is eventually to give rise to bodhicitta, and to join the realization of bodhicitta with the wisdom realizing emptiness, and to unlock our potential, and to be of perfect benefit for sentient beings. So we generate those minds of confidence and refuge and bodhicitta as our motivation. All right. So today, what we'll do is we'll finish the remaining 3 contemplations in the section on bodhicitta where we are. And then on Thursday, there is a puja at the same time. So we are off on Thursday. So then in December, we will focus and finish on, we'll move to and focus on and finish the section on emptiness. And that'll be the focus of the sessions in December. And that will conclude the Lamrim Year. There were, as you know, in the section that we're in, you'll remember that there were interspersed kind of individual contemplations on calm abiding, on special insight. That is a whole kind of section. They didn't really give it. I thought, you know, it was kind of interesting. They didn't really label it as its own section on calm abiding and special insight. as you find in the Lamrim, the stages of the path. But there were, individual contemplations. So, Lamrim Year isn't really meant, to supplant the study of the Lamrim in a more scholarly way. It's kind of meant to go along with or to demonstrate how to bring to mind individual contemplations as one is perhaps reading the middle length Lamrim or the Lamrim Chenmo or Yangtze Rinpoche is practicing the path. In all of those more extensive commentaries on the Lamrim, you're going to find much more detailed information on every topic that Lamrim Year covers. I just think, maybe that's even perhaps particularly so with the section on calm abiding and special insight, because there wasn't really so much of the methods, that you find and kind of the more detailed information that you find in the Lamrim, whereas maybe with some of the other topics, the contemplations condensed the sections, perhaps maybe a little bit more comprehensively. So that's kind of an interesting observation in the way that the Lamrim Year is laid out.
Venerable, is this
Mhm.
excuse me, sorry, is this the first time that you've taught this particular version of the Lamrim Year?
Yeah, well, I haven't done a class on Lamrim Year before. Yeah.
Well, I'm enjoying it a lot.
Oh, good.
Me too. It's gone very well.
So in terms of calm abiding, though, we do have a retreat coming up in January, the 6th, the 5th. Well, there's a sort of an evening talk on the 5th. It's sort of connected to the retreat. And then the real retreat, we're calling that like a public talk on the relationship between ethics and calm abiding. And then the weekend retreat is the 6th and the 7th of January. Geshe Dundrup is doing that. So if you were looking for, and he'll be using, particularly focusing on using an image of the Buddha, which is a common um, object that is used within and how to do that. Of course, we all know the breath is another common object, but actually in the Mahayana tradition, it's more common to use a visualized image of the Buddha. And so you rely on a physical image of the Buddha until you are someone who can very, very clearly generate an imagined or a visualized image of the Buddha. So that'll be the object that he's particularly focusing on in that retreat. But okay, so we're going to, as I say, it could be a shorter, I don't know if we'll take the full hour, because like, as I say, we're going to just hold off on starting the next section until next Monday. Were there any questions from the last class or anything that we are covering before we, as we're bringing this section to a close? Okay, so let's see where we are. I have to literally like scroll. Almost there. Goodness. Okay, so the last three contemplations that we're going to cover, days 337 through 340, they're not really introducing a lot of new technical information. They're in a way kind of all based around discussing the benefits of bodhicitta in a way, which, as we've seen, is a very common device in the sutra teachings, thinking about the advantages of something and the disadvantages of not doing something, like with patience or with guru devotion, or the other topics. It's very common that you'll find an exploration of the benefits. So day 337, the quotation, bodhicitta is the most perfect way to practice Dharma. It's from Lama Yeshe, is the quotation. So then he goes on to talk about kind of a famous story about what does it mean to practice Dharma. The story of when Dromtonpa met a disciple, and so Dromtonpa was Lama Atisha. Lama Atisha, of course, is the originator of the Lamrim tradition. He wrote Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, which was the first historical effort at condensing the sutra path. And then there were other commentaries. There were a total of 18 great Lamrim commentaries that eventually would get written from different, within all of the different schools of Tibetan Buddhism. In our tradition, it's the Lamrim Chenmo that we turn to, within the Gulug tradition, that we turn to as the kind of most complete, most definitive source. Although it is said that the middle length Lamrim, particularly the section on, I think it's the emptiness section, a special insight section, is revered in a particular way, as being very, very clear and helpful. Maybe even particularly more clear and more impactful than the way it's laid out. Not that it's like revealing something that's new, but there was some people will say, people do say that it kind of gets at the heart of the same wisdom, the same topic, in a way that people find perhaps easier or more, I don't know if clear, there's a word better than clear. So that particular aspect of the middle length Lamrim is celebrated in that sense. Although the middle length Lamrim is, as I've said before, it can be called, or is called, like the meditators Lamrim, because it kind of omits a lot of the scholarly citations that you find in the great treatise on the Lamrim, which goes into much more exacting detail with many more individual citations. And those citations still, I would say, are helpful in meditation. Sometimes a particular quotation that you read will, be sparked by a particular contemplation, and that can be very helpful. But I think that the middle length Lamrim just kind of presents the essence of all of those same topics in a way that's a bit less quotation heavy. So the story that's in day 337 is Dromtonpa meeting a man who was circumambulating a stupa. We all know that stupas are kind of here, we probably have like tabletop stupas, but of course stupas are often architectural kinds of buildings. They can be varying sizes. They can be, anywhere from, a couple of several feet in diameter up to I don't know, hundreds of feet in diameter. And so he was circumambulating most likely something that was at least dozens of feet in diameter, let's say, something that was more architectural in nature. And circumambulating, of course, means to literally walk around or to move around in a circle. It's called kora in Tibetan, to engage in a kora, to move around. Generally, a person is reciting prayers or mantras, and they're meditating. It's, in a way, it's a movement meditation in relation to a holy object, is the idea. You're a holy object and you're also meditating and you're moving. So Drum Tumpa comes across someone engaging in that, which is still 2,600 years later a very, very common practice in India, in Tibet, in Nepal, circumambulate in the West, in Buddhist centers. So he asks this person, like, "What are you doing?" And he says, "I'm circumambulating. I'm, reciting prayers, reciting mantra, and meditating around a stupa, or at least, who knows? This person, because then Drum Tumpa says, wouldn't it be better if you practiced wouldn't it be better if you practiced Dharma? So this person was engaging in an outward action that is ubiquitous in Buddhist societies. Could be, I don't know personally if it's culturally, how culturally ubiquitous it is among all Buddhist societies, but in India and in Tibet, at least, is very, very common. And then so this person thought, hey, I am practicing Dharma. I'm doing this thing that like everybody else is doing, that hundreds of other people are also commonly doing. But Drum Tumpa was like, no, you should be practicing Dharma. And then Drum Tumpa came across somebody who was prostrating, here. And we all know prostrating, there's full length, probably either full length prostration or half length prostration, engaging in this process of, and again, this is also incredibly common. People will prostrate in front of holy objects. They might prostrate, some people will even prostrate as a way of traveling. People will like go to pilgrimage to, say, Bodh Gaya, and for 100 miles or something, they will do that in prostration. They will only prostrate as they go to a place of, rather than just walking there, or they will make that entire journey only doing it through prostration, which is extraordinary. But, only if you have the right mindset, only if your mind is actually absorbed into something virtuous. So then Drum Tumpa says, well, wouldn't it be better, again, wouldn't it be better if you practiced Dharma? So again, these are two like outwardly physical actions, circumambulating, prostrating, that you find hundreds and hundreds of people engaging in. And Drum Tampa's point is that, maybe, who knows, I guess the implication is Drum Tumpa maybe had some clairvoyance, and could tell that for these specific people, because certainly it could be a Dharma action if a person has the right motivation, but perhaps Drum Tumpa had some unique insight to be able to say that these, people. And so, and as I say, it could be, but we can't know just from a person's outward actions whether they are practicing Dharma, whether it's meditation or whatever. If they're doing it, we've talked, of course, about how the 8 worldly concerns is something that, negatively impacts our practice, and is something that can co-opt our practice if, You know, if the yogi in the cave is thinking about what the villagers are thinking about the yogi in the cave, then he's wasting, you know, he or she is wasting his or her time engaging in the retreat, or, you know, what have you, because they're doing it to bolster their reputation, their standing in society. So in the commentary, it says we have to transform our attachment and self-cherishing. If we haven't changed our mind in this way, none of the other practices work. Doing them is just a joke. Dharma means a complete change of attitude. That's what really brings us inner happiness. That is the true Dharma. So Lama Yeshe is saying that this motivation, that we're encouraged to become increasingly familiar with, the motivation of bodhicitta, is true Dharma, is what, you know, that that inner technology of focusing on that motivation and taking that, even if it's, you know, not stable, even if it's artificial, even if it's very effortful, the more that we focus the mind on it over the years, over the decades, is the vehicle, is the technology, the inner technology that will bring about this change of attitude, that will reduce the ego, that will, um, you know, because as we know, you know, what are the methods for generating bodhicitta, the 7-point cause and effect, or the equalizing and exchanging self for other. That's how you become familiar with that motivation, and that way of orienting oneself to other sentient beings, ultimately is what brings about these incredible transformations. So he says the best Dharma practice, the most perfect, is without a doubt the practice of bodhicitta.
Excuse me, Venerable.
Mhm.
He's used the word comfortable a couple of times, and I'm wondering if that is in relation to the third line down. It says there's no east-west conflict. Is he alluding to the fact that it creates that comfort between people, or I'm not, what does that mean to you?
I think, I mean, in general, I think he means, you know, that it's in one way, I think because we it is directly what generates a mind of selflessness, a mind of altruism, then it's very effective in tamping down the afflictions, you know, greed and anger and jealousy, and, you know, because one's life becomes more and more centered, more and more focused on being of benefit. But then, of course, also, it's just then what is of benefit. Then all a person thinks about is what is truly of benefit, and not like, and you know, benefit that transcends giving, you know, installing a person in a temporary. Of course, you know, we you know, we do our best to ameliorate, you know, disease and poverty, and, you know, the kinds of things that are happening to whatever degree is, you know, reasonable and so on. But when a person is truly understands that the real focus isn't just on that, then it isn't, they don't get caught up in kind of conceptualization of, you know, well, this system is better than that system, and this way of doing things is better than that way of doing things. Their goal is to lead all sentient beings to enlightenment, and only that becomes the real core. um, and so it isn't, it's just, you know, you just turn toward the Buddhist teachings and you don't get wrapped up in, well, these people say that we should have this kind of philosophical system or this kind of economic system, or it's just what does or does not bring a person to enlightenment. How do I enlighten all sentient beings? So it cuts through, I think, a lot of the conceptualization, cultural conceptualization. It's kind of how I would. So I think in one way, it, as I say, it is an extremely powerful antidote to the arising of delusion, which are in one's own mind painful when they arise and uncomfortable. And then also it cuts through kind of being trapped in just thinking about surface level responses to people, which are very much, this opinion, this group, that group, kind of taking sides, and that also gives rise to conflict, and like, no, these people are wrong, these people are right. It's just, of course, you have to also be even minded about, not getting upset at people who don't think that enlightenment is real, or, so you have to have an even mindedness about your own practice too. You shouldn't get wrapped up in, getting angry at people with different views about what's ultimately beneficial, like people saying that, well, we have to save people through encouraging them to have a different sort of attitude or something. So you have to do that too, but in a way, bodhicitta could also give you that spaciousness, in the sense that you might recognize that, well, for this particular lifetime, this particular other vehicle is really helpful for this person. I'm never going to convince them to do something different. And they are charitable, they're generous, they are caring, they are interested in helping, to the best of their ability. And all of that is creating a lot of merit, a lot of virtuous karma. And so that's wonderful. Like, how amazing that they have a system that they do have confidence in. It's not my system, but it's allowing them to have a meaningful life that's creating a lot of virtue in their mind. And then secretly you think, oh, well, that virtue will ripen in a future life that's helpful. But still, you can still rejoice without feeling conflict. You can rejoice without labeling it as something problematic.
Thank you.
So then the next contemplation, day 338. The quotation is again Lama Yeshe: bodhicitta energy is alchemical. It transforms our entire life into positivity and benefit for others. So then he says, bodhicitta is the vehicle that carries us to enlightenment, but it is also great psychology with this. So again, just carrying on this theme of the incredible benefits of bodhicitta. We overcome self-cherishing, we overcome hatred, we have better relationships with others, and we reduce our conflict with others. So therefore our relationships improve. And then it naturally gives rise to a peaceful, calm attitude, where, we recognize that all of the problems of society come from, they're just manifestations of inner states that, competitiveness and, greed and envy, and, those are the origin of wars and conflicts and, inequity, inequality, racism, sexism, all of the isms. They come from states of mind. They're not something that are intrinsic, or, that in people. They're just views. They're philosophical views, and those views are expressions of the delusions. They're expressions of hatred and envy and jealousy and so on. So we recognize that that's really what, instead of thinking, oh, if we just subjugate this group, or we just destroy this group, or, because that's not true. We see that that's false. That's a false narrative, that if that happens, then peace is achieved. Peace might be achieved for a time. There might be a reduction in overt, violence in a particular region for a particular period of time. But as long as hatred abides in the minds of sentient beings, as long as greed and envy and so on abide in the minds of sentient beings, then they'll find expression. They'll find ways of being translated into social structures, institutions, the way that societies and governments interact with one another. So he says, enlightenment is a universal attitude. Our mind becomes universal. We become universal energy. So, because again, the mind of bodhicitta is a mind that can't, by definition, can't exclude any sentient being. We can't think, and that's something, of course, we have to work up to, or, as we know, equanimity, overcoming partiality, is the immediate precursor. But ultimately, we have to eliminate the idea that we're just trying to lead the good people, or the ones that we like, or the ones that are, doing the right things, just leading them to enlightenment. Any thoughts or questions? So the third contemplation, bodhicitta, should be the motivation for everything that we do. And now this is Lama Zopa Rinpoche, not Lama Yeshe, day 339. Bodhicitta, the altruistic mind, in the commentary that works solely for the enlightenment of all sentient beings, is the key to unlocking the great secret of happiness. With bodhicitta, everything is possible. Without it, there will always be limitations. Bodhicitta is the vastest of minds. So again, because the field of bodhicitta is every single sentient being in every realm of existence, every human being, every animal, every preta, every hell being, every demigod, every god, every being in the form and formless realms. There's no sentient beings that are not included in the field of bodhicitta. So they're by definition. And not only that, but you want the highest possible good for every single one of those incalculable sentient beings. You don't simply want them to have comfort and ease, and so you want them to have the state of enlightenment, which there is no higher good, at least as far as we know. I mean, at least maybe when you get to that point, who knows, what you become aware of, but there's nothing taught that's beyond that. That's the ultimate highest possible state of sentient beings. And that is what you wish. That is what you, and not only wish, but as we saw, with the Bodhisattva vows, that is what you are actively committing yourself, to accomplishing, by myself alone. I will bring every one of these sentient beings into the state of enlightenment. And so the field of sentient beings is innumerable, is incalculable, and in relation to that field, you are striving only to provide the highest, best, most perfect state, that completely free of suffering, and possessing of all forms of happiness and bliss. Um, so there's that kind of attitude has inconceivable benefit, inconceivable merit behind that. They say that, you can't, you it's sort of the one thing that you can't overstate, because it's an inexpressibly perfect benefit. And so no matter how we as ordinary limited conceptual beings, no matter what kind of words or ideas or concepts we can come up with, the actual reality, because we can't truly directly perceive the suffering of cyclic existence, this unending, you know, birth, that is truly beginningless and endless. So putting an end to that and installing sentient beings in a state, our minds cannot hold the actual benefit of enlightenment. We can kind of approximate various concepts, but no matter what concepts we approximate, the actual benefit is greater. So it isn't, with some things you could you could you could say, well, all we need is to understand, impermanence. And if we understand impermanence, and so you could get like really, you could, certainly impermanence is important and we need to understand, but you could overstate its benefits. You could say, well, impermanence will lead a person to enlightenment, understanding the temporary nature of all things. And that's false. That's not true. It has its place, and its place is critical in the overall structure of the path, but it is possible to overstate what that realization accomplishes. But it isn't possible to overstate what wishing and striving to bring all sentient beings to actual full enlightenment. Not even, it's not even arhatship. It's not even trying to encourage and lead sentient beings to, lower nirvana. It's inconceivable, the benefits of actually working for all sentient beings arriving in the state of actual enlightenment. So, we should try to incorporate, even if it doesn't seem like, oh, I'm going to work for the, for the benefit, for, to bring all sentient beings to enlightenment. I'm going to the grocery store to bring all sentient beings to enlightenment. We should try to suffuse every action of body, speech, and mind as much as possible with that kind of motivation. Any thoughts or questions on the section on bodhicitta?
I think what it keeps coming back to me again and again is just, and it's mentioned at the very bottom of the page, is the just having the aspiration. That sets you on that path. And I I speak for myself. I don't think you can ever turn back. Once you have that aspiration, it's just it's what motivates you, and it maybe even is that comfort as well, and that makes your life comfortable. And I don't mean that in a you know in any way of taking things for granted or whatever, but that you that it's your motivation as a result, just having the aspiration for others.
right. So then I think we will leave it there for today, unless there's a question or anything else that would be helpful in that section. And yeah, so as I say, we've got 23 more individual contemplations to focus on in December. So I think, well, I think if we can try to do like three a day, and maybe I don't know if we have to do all of them, but we've actually done almost all of the we didn't really skip hardly any. I think there were just a couple of the hell realms that we maybe skipped out of concern for their intensity, but we did almost every contemplation in the book. Right, so we'll end with dedication. So we bring to mind our positive motivation. I think that by having listened and contemplated in this way, participated in the course, we've actualized that altruistic motivation, which has generated positive energy in the mind. And that positive energy will ripen in the future in a beneficial way. So I bring to mind the spiritually beneficial way that we are offering our practice, a spiritually supportive, beneficial way that we wish that positive energy to ripen. All right. So we will pick it back up in 1 week.